Now, the Human Rights Commission has issued subpoenas to several government departments demanding updates on efforts to tackle malnutrition in the Eastern Cape. Now, this move follows a 2022 report that highlighted ongoing concerns in the region. Among the departments called to account are the Department of Social Development, Health, Home Affairs and the Eastern Cape Office of the Premier. Let's take you there live.
Of dilapidated road infrastructure, particularly for the farming communities, where big trucks are unable, especially due to climate change as well, unable to access the produce, and sometimes the produce then rots because the roads are inaccessible. So we view the topic of the day as taking place within an intersection of other crises and other challenges, all of which are the continuing legacies of a system of subjugation. The legacies of hunger, the legacies of unemployment, the legacies of poverty, the legacies of inequalities that we are trying to address as we look into the issue of children dying because they are unable to eat food that is sufficient for their nutrition. So once again, thank you very much, Premier. I'm now going to hand over to the PM as indicated earlier. Over to you, PM.
Thank you so much, Chairperson of the session, Chairperson of the Commission, Commissioner Makwasha, and Honourable Premier as well as your office. We have a history of a very good relationship with your office, and we're very thankful for that. Our office, Mr. Fortune, we frequently engage with the Office of the Premier in this province, and as Commissioner Tuli has also indicated, we have the benefit of a bird's eye view of what is happening in the Eastern Cape, where efforts are being implemented, and we can categorically say that we see the efforts, Honourable Premier. Yesterday, we had the benefit of hearing from the Department of Social Development, the Department of Health, as well as the Department of Education. And through each, and at the start of each of their submissions, we recognize the steps that have been taken. The steps that you've outlined here this morning, we've recognized them, we've seen them. Against that backdrop, Honourable Premier, however, I would just like us to refer to the first presentation that was provided to us by the Department of Health. The National Department of Health assisted the Commission with the data right in front to our session. And if we can just refer you to the data. Now, in the 2024 year alone, it was 107 children who died of severe acute malnutrition in the province. For the past few months, we are sitting, I think, roughly at about 70. So we won't have this year's numbers yet. Now, Premier, the steps taken, I'm persistently making reference to that because we recognize that your office has pushed for these steps to be taken. Now, the year that we hosted the inquiry, Honourable Premier, there were 116 deaths of severe acute malnutrition in the province. Fast forward 2.5 years, or 2 years, we're sitting at 107. So in essence, in spite of all of these efforts that the province has very actively taken, to quote the DG of the Department of Health, it doesn't seem like we're moving the needle a lot. And that's not through a lack of effort on your side, Honourable Premier. It's the data. And that's the data that the Department of Health has provided to us. And you can see, certainly not unique to the Eastern Cape, you will see that there are other provinces facing the same challenges. And we will also provide it with insight into perhaps why that is. Now, Honourable Premier, with that backdrop, I just thought it was very important for us to use the data. Because it seems like we are still in the same situation. We've managed to improve with 9 lives, which is every life counts, every child's life counts, but it is not, in the view of the Commission, perhaps moving quick enough if we look at the responsibilities we have from the Commission side, from the executive side, from the legislature, towards the rights of children in terms of Section 28 of the Constitution. So I wanted to show you that, Honourable Premier, so that we have the data on hand when we then reflect on the steps. But we also had the benefit to hear from the national departments. And Premier, the reason you would have seen the names of the national departments appearing on the list of those who were subpoenaed is because we feel that the steps that we are being taken in the province, we can see that. But what is the responsibility of national now? To come on board, to start unlocking what we have mentioned here this morning is a systemic lack of investment and a systemic lack of support because of the colonial history, because of a lack of investment during the apartheid era. Now, Premier Mike, that as a backdrop, perhaps I can just show the next slide. I wanted to also, just for a benefit of a holistic view, Tembi, 2024 UNICEF published statistics on child food poverty. Back to that slide, please. Child food poverty, and we had, no, the previous one, please, colleagues, that you had just on the screen. They published statistics on child food poverty, and I want to just plot us there. South Africa is there at the bottom. But the yellow line is the child food poverty line and the percentage of South Africa, and we're around 60% there. And I went and I inserted the GDPs of these countries, just to illustrate. And you will recognize and you will agree with me that South Africa's GDP is so much stronger than all of those countries. But our child food poverty line is very high. It accords with, if we can have a look, with Kenya, with Rwanda, with Madagascar. But the blue line you will see is our GDP is much higher. Now, with the benefit of having my Commissioner Makwasha here, who is championing child food poverty challenges that we are having. So, Honourable Premier, that was the context within which I want to pose my questions. Would you agree, noting that the child support grant is not a provincial competency, but would you agree that an increase at national level of the child support grant, which is currently not meeting the food poverty line, would you agree that that would benefit the children of the Eastern Cape and assist us to move the needle in preventing these child hunger deaths? That's my first question. Then, Honourable Premier, looking at the numbers, would you agree with me that in spite of, and we recognize again, I want to underline this question, in spite of the steps that we have taken as a province, and we walk hand in hand with you, Honourable Premier. Commissioner Makwasha was actually addressing your sessions of consultation during the consultation period for this food security strategy. She was here. So we are walking hand in hand with you, Premier, but would you agree that in spite of all of these steps that we've taken, that the numbers don't lie? That perhaps we haven't moved the needle enough? And then perhaps my final question that I would like to put to you, Honourable Premier, is that we heard from the Department of Education noting that there is a missing portion of children who do not necessarily benefit from government's immensely successful program of the National School Nutrition Program. It is the most successful mechanism, poverty alleviation mechanism, that is assisting our children in the province. But the kids who are not yet there, entering that system, they are falling through the cracks here. Because the ECD money that is being moved towards the children in those centres, the subsidies, apologies, is not commensurate to the success that the NSNP is having. That's why the Commission made the recommendation to extend the National School Nutrition Program now to the ECD area. And that would be supported by the pronouncement that was made in 2019 that this competency is now being moved back to the Department of Education. But we heard yesterday from the National Department that the rollout of almost a similar program to the ECD sector is now entering pilot phase. Now, Honourable Premier, when we speak about little ones and children, our time is so much more urgent. The turnaround time for these pilot phases cannot be business as usual. Honourable Premier, the quarterly reporting that you have come here to display, and again my underscoring of we note that, it reflects a almost unfortunately business as usual reporting, where by the time we roll out these pilot programs, by the time we can agree with Treasury, who will be appearing here this afternoon, that the child support grant is not enough to feed children, those children might become a statistic young people. So those are 3 questions from my side, Honourable Premier, and I thank you for always your amenability to engage with the Human Rights Commission on all of our inquiries that we've held in this province. And we are very encouraged with the plans, but perhaps from your side we can be, the highlights from your side can assist us further to not only, like Commissioner Makosha as well as Mtuli and Chairperson certainly as well, have had the benefit to hear the past few days that we need to think outside of the box now. And all of the departments who appeared here agreed with us, and it almost became a think tank because it can't be business as usual, Honourable Premier. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, PM. Honourable Premier, so that we don't overwhelm you with the questions, let's maybe give you the opportunity to respond before we take the next set of questions. Over to you, Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Honourable Commissioner. Firstly, let's just, as we have indicated in the presentation up front, that this is a very complex subject. And I agree with the provincial manager that we should definitely have to think outside the box and how best. Because for health to simply say, most of these cases arrive at health when health can no longer do anything about them. So that's why they will simply say this is malnutrition, severe malnutrition, but there are underlying that would have been detected if we were to go strongly on the primary health care system. Detect. You see, difficult in rural areas, this is a reality. It's a fact. People must travel about 20 kilometers to get into the nearest clinic. That one alone means that you must not have less than 60 rand for you to go to a clinic to get services. I think the system itself of allocating population without looking at this challenge of topography, the difficult of provinces like Eastern Cape rural setup, it's something that we needed. Yes, of course, we're intervening by having some mobile clinics, reaching out to people, but something that we still needed to do much more vigorously so that we go out and get into our people is than them waiting for them. Because now we wait for them up until they come here when we can no longer help them. Which is a difficult challenge that we are grappling with. I agree it can no longer be business as usual. And when we said we must build a developmental, capable, ethical, and agile state, was exactly on that score. To be able to respond to issues like this, surely if we can't address the developmental challenges, inefficiencies, we are going to experience this matter of problem. And I agree with you that the GDP of the country is much more strong and bigger than the countries that we're listing there in Africa. For us to have that sort of a situation, yes, we've been talking about inequality and all that, but I think government has got to to change and respond to these realities. And I agree with you, numbers don't lie. Yes, the issue of data reliability and all that, this is what we said we're going to be focusing on, so that we monitor that. And I agree with you of the missing link. Those kids that are not yet there, whilst we're still talking about pilot phasing, we've already integrated the early child development into the mainstream, into the education. So, of course, the issue of rollout of the school nutrition, because it's going to help us to mitigate this. Because if you have got kids having at least 2 meals a day at school, morning and lunch, it will make a huge difference over and above the child support grant that our kids are getting. The other biggest problem that we are not yet talking to is to find a situation where you have got kids, 6 of them, I've just recently experienced something like that, all left with grandmother. Mother has gone either to Cape Town or Gauteng looking for greener pastures with the card for these kids. So the grant is not here where kids are. The grant is somewhere where the mother is, and this grant doesn't belong to the mother, but unfortunately the mother also belongs to the missing category, because the mother is not either in the social security grant category for benefits, just in the middle of nowhere, is looking for a job. And even those who are staying at home with their kids, they also rely on these grants of kids. So we've got a bigger problem there, which I think as government we've got to find a better way of tightening up. If it's a child support grant, it must go to a child. A guardian must be monitored on whether this grant indeed help kids. So I agree with you that we are moving the needle, but very probably sluggishly. It's not that the needle is not moving; it is moving. But I think with a much more integrated and collaborative approach, we should be able to tackle. And as I've said, this is not really insurmountable. Land is a factor of production. If we can be able to work the land and invest as much as we can, yes, we are trying with the little resources, all other things being equal. But more effort should yield us better dividends than what we are getting. So I agree with you, provincial manager, that we need to be a little bit aggressive on this. And, Eastern Cape is part of government of South Africa. We don't have a federal state here. We've got a unitary state. So it cannot just be about Eastern Cape people shouting and shouting. National government must understand these statistics very well. And yes, I know we've been raising the issue of the budget formula, which is a problem on its own, the allocation. So the more numbers leave, and I once even said I request National to do census in December, not to do census during mid-year. I just want to see the same data and see numbers better. Because if we continue with this budgeting, that simply means the underdeveloped province will be permanently underdeveloped. They will never get enough resources to move. With the legal we have, we are able to push, but you need more government, national government focus to say, we need to lift those provinces. As they say that we might be peripheral to the center, but we are the center of the periphery here. So we need to lift those people to be at the level of others. We need to take and encourage. The business will only come here if government will be able to invest in terms of the infrastructure, particularly roads and all that, to really catalyze the economic development. And then all other issues will be history. People need jobs. We've got to create jobs for our people. Because government is not going to sustain these interventions. These are short term. We've got to look at the medium to long term and long term strategies to address this problem. We can't, I agree with you, one life is more than enough. We can't afford to have young lives being lost in the manner in which it is happening. And we are all exposed to this, or we are all susceptible to these opportunistic diseases. We've got to focus more on the primary health education, primary health care, to make sure that at least a child is protected from the embryonic stages up until a child is a real human being. So I fully agree. And of course, the increase, I know the debate of the living wage and all that, the increase will surely make a difference. But also, you will find that in most cases, and maybe that Home Affairs is here, the most challenges that some of these kids don't even have access to that. There are a lot of packages that are there within the child support grant, so they are categorized differently. They are not all the same. So the information that is getting to our people, some people are just sitting there in the rural areas of Pondoland and elsewhere in our inland, not accessing this because mother is nowhere to be found. So a father who's staying with a child without a birth certificate, the laws are making it such a difficult that that father must do. If a child was not registered on birth, 3 months gone, difficult to get that process moving quicker in order to get, and that child is going. When you come in, already a child is suffering from the severe malnutrition and that child can no longer be saved. So I think we've got to work together. We've got to get our system, the ecosystem functioning optimally. So it must not be a problem of a mayor or a ward councillor knocking at the doors of a minister or a premier. All of us, we must understand what the pain our people are going through. So I fully agree. I think I'm still committing, as I've said, we'll do whatever that we can do, but we can push to a certain level or a certain limit. Someone else above us must punch above our weight to make sure that we are able to address these systemic and chronic challenges we've been grappling with.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Premier. I will now hand over to Commissioner Makusha.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the provincial manager. She often steals my questions, so I'm just going to focus on. I think what we need to acknowledge is that even all the departments who presented yesterday, amazing policies, amazing programs that they explained to us. Premier, your presentation, amazing once again. And I think it goes back to the theme that children cannot eat policies. You know, and in terms of Section 28 of the Constitution, it says the best interests of the child are paramount. And you know, the timelines you've given us, I think in one of the slides, I just want to open it up. You spoke about 2 years, that the program will be implemented in 2 years. Now, if we have the numbers correctly, just this financial year we've lost 70 children. So if we're waiting for 2 years, how many lives are we going to lose while we're slowly moving the needle? So that's my, just a comment on that. In terms of the numbers that you've given us, Honourable Premier, you said 39.5% is the unemployment rate in the Eastern Cape. 9.1% of households in the Eastern Cape consider the access to food as severely inadequate. And we're not talking about nutritious food, simply food. And the problem with malnutrition is not access to food, it's the problem of access to nutritious food, which a lot of South Africans don't have access to due to the financial burden. We then are told that in terms of the numbers, so 46.4% are unemployed youth, and when we're given the numbers, the unemployed youth are the mothers. It's your teenage mothers, but also children who are mothers due to statutory rape. And we need to address it. We can't hide behind teenage mothers to capture everyone, because we then lose the real problem in South Africa, gender-based violence, specifically in respect of statutory rape of children. Now, I see one of the programs, and I just wanted to ask, why doesn't the program also target children who give birth, due to the fact that you also acknowledge the low breastfeeding rate? You stating that it's less than 25%. Yesterday, the Department of Health said it's below 50%. I also want to acknowledge that you have now gone to private sector.
Can you go to the previous question?
Oh yes, why does it not target children who give birth? just to have conversations with them, but to also provide them with support. Because once you start, it's very difficult for them to provide you with the support. And all of what we heard is that they don't want to breastfeed. They are embarrassed, they're conscious of their body. I also want to acknowledge that you've now moved away from government stakeholders in resolving the problem, but have also then incorporated the mining sector, but this is for societal ills. Have you looked at retails that focus, or businesses that focus on food, to ask them if they can participate and hold hands with government to resolve these issues? And my question is always, the issue of money. How much money has been allocated to these programs? You've given us a glimpse, but I just want to see in its entirety how much has the provincial government allocated, and how can we then support the province in ensuring the National Treasury either expands the budget or adjusts it so that we can address this severe issue. Now, in terms of the presentations we've received, I just wanted to say that there is a need for proper governmental coordination.
We're in the Eastern Cape there just this moment where we're seeing the Human Rights Commission, which has issued some subpoenas there to several government departments in the province. As you heard there, this now follows a 2022 report that highlighted ongoing concerns in that province. Now we have Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane there now answering some questions, of which many would term as the bread and butter issues there pertaining to some of the communities there in the Eastern Cape.